on
There.
YouTube?
This is now on YouTube.
Okay, so it's live.
Yeah. Confidence means being sent to a third party. Okay. Sent to- All right. Mark, I don't mean to be negative, but I'm going to suspect from my perch that you will be the only one joining us besides Art. All right. So Roberto is in New York and indicated schedule conflict. Cord is traveling. What was it showing? College visits, yeah. Sherry indicated she couldn't make it, and Barbara Truman from the foundation did say she could be here, but we
It
haven't
is what it
seen
is.
or heard from her since that.
All right. Well, thanks to the rest of the folks there. So
Okay. Well, do you mind if I just start the review of the
no,
synopsis?
I absolutely don't.
Okay. Well, staff has met and poured through this document that Latala put together, and it's actually pretty exciting. So this is not meant to be something that we dictate from. Oh, Cord.
Good.
Cord, geez, I thought you were already on the road to visit colleges.
He's muted, but
Yeah.
Maybe he's on the road.
But,
Let's just give him a second to
yeah.
get settled in.
There we go.
All right, Cord, I'm glad you're able to make it. I just assumed you were going to be on the road already.
Now I'm starting here in a little bit, but I'm short staffed, so that's why I want to do this morning.
All right. Okay, well, good. That's excellent. Thank you so much. Let's make sure we mark Cord is present. Okay. All right, so Cord, we haven't started anything. I'm just going to do a review of the synopsis. This is not meant to be a document from which we dictate. This is just the start of attempting to compress Latala's rather complete document into something that we can work from to develop an actual printed strategic plan. So I'd like to start with research and collections as core priorities. There's a number of things here. We have 5 bullets. Now, to put things into context, in my estimation and my recommendation to this committee is that we are in a position where we've more than doubled the size of the research and collection staff over the last decade. And so that puts us in pretty good stead, I think. And of course, we have since the last strategic plan, we have new assets coming online that's going to help with our financial stability. And of course, our mandate for outreach to all citizens of the Commonwealth. So I think this strategic plan, and the reason we put research and collections as core priorities at the top, is something we should really have a heavy focus on. And the first bullet, I think, is most important. It's going to be a hard sell. It's always difficult to get funds for a new FTE, particularly for a curator, when non-scientists might not necessarily see the value of that. But I do believe that we should have in our strategic plan starting in May, and actually time of rollout is going to be another discussion coming up. But whenever we put it out in 2025, I think one of the points is that every session we should be requesting through the Secretary's office a new FTE specific to research and collections. Cal, you've had a couple of ideas. Do you think you can just walk through it?
Yeah, I mean, we have more or less 2 choices: either request a new curatorial position in areas that we currently don't have staff. And the one thing that comes to mind is invertebrate paleontology. We have a fantastic collection, including the very unique solite flooring materials, but we have not had an invertebrate paleo curator for probably 10 years now.
Decade and a half.
Yeah, so longer than that. And the alternative will be a more technical position or technician position. And one thing that comes to mind is a person that is also a preparator, a person that not only can support any of the departments in RNC, but also lend a hand to exhibits. And the example is our former technician, Ray Bowden, that was heavily involved in most, if not all, exhibits that are currently on display in the institution. So those are very much the 2 major avenues we will be looking for.
All right, I think that's gonna be one of our real, key tasks, each year as far as, making funds requests. Maybe we get it right away, maybe it'll take a few asks, so I don't know if, Cord or Mark, do you have anything that you want to add to that?
No, I think that's the right direction to go, especially as you can have a position that can cross over. But also
Absolutely.
if that position, could also start, and I'm not advocating for a tech position, I'm just sort of saying that if we could find somebody that could grow from that and move into curatorial at some point, if such an animal exists in the world, that might also, provide a pathway for people to see within the organization that you can grow up.
I think one of the things that might help us in the long run is if, in-house documents, we at least list the significant collections that we have
Yes.
and clearly indicate which ones have curatorial staff that are overseeing them, and more importantly, making clear that we have significant collections to which there is no curator involved. And I think that will help people, get the disconnect. Seeing that we have this significant, such as geology. I'm not promoting geology either, but we had a geology department here for years, and now this collection is, more or less mothballed. If we decide to go that route, at least it ought to be there to let people know here's a collection, but we don't have the personnel currently. And people might say, okay, well, maybe we need to do something about that.
That's a great idea. Ben, can you put that on your to-do list?
Absolutely, I'll be happy to.
Okay, thank you. All right, one thing that came out, I think pretty strongly during the meeting in Danville was to connect current research in RNC to contemporary issues in a rapidly changing world. So this could be climate change, invasive species. What was the other one we were talking about? Human-induced habitat loss and alteration. Yeah, just using that as an example. I talked with Zach and Ryan about that. I think that's something that we do. Our stuff is definitely connected, but I don't know how well we communicate that. So I think that's up to the supporting cast to really help communicate that along. And we can work with the curators to find out what those connections are,
There's, I can't remember the agency at the moment, but there's a state agency that's been putting together these GIS maps of Virginia that are just fantastic, and they show land use in the state. And you can make comparisons for land use versus those lands that are managed for conservation. That would include national forests, national parks, state parks, natural area preserves, things like that. There are public and private entities as well. But that's the kind of thing that will provide a really stark visual aid to kick things off, and there might be an opportunity to cooperate with those agencies to turn that data into more of a physical presence.
Cool. I love it.
Well, Jackson and myself were involved in the 2025 Wildlife Action Plan that is headed by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife.
Right.
And I think you were
I was on
involved,
it too, yeah.
Art was involved as well. So that is a connection of what we do in providing expertise and recommendation of species that need to be listed, at least at the state level currently, and possibly considered for federal listing in the future. So these are things we do. These are things where we can apply our expertise facing, or at least trying to mitigate some of these issues.
Yeah. So again, I think we do a lot of this. It's a matter of kind of communicating through the lens of these issues that should resonate with other agencies, the general public, and so forth. I mean, an example is, we of course have a very active fossil program, and of course, the fossils show a constantly changing Earth. But the point is when you marry the paleo with the contemporary, what we see is the problem that we face is not a changing Earth. Sure, it's changed forever, but it's the rate at which things are changing. And I think we can help illustrate that. So speaking of which as well, kind of connecting things back to something that is continuing from the last strategic plan to now, the curators are going to continue to grow the collections. We, of course, are going to hire a new curator. upcoming to be Nancy Moncrief's successor. We'll be asking for this new FTE, and we already have an active program in collecting and growth of the collections. So that just kind of underscores the need to continue the Douglas Avenue rehab. So that way, we're of course going to do a field trip over there tomorrow. Staff has put a lot of time into getting that place ready and squared away for the next major phase of the renovation. So Jonathan, can you bring everyone up to speed where we stand with the next phase?
Of the Douglas renovation?
Yes.
So, right now, the contract has made it through Department of Engineering and Building. So we have the AE firm online to do all the drawings, et cetera, to get everything, started. That's the first step, getting the renovation through DEB, so we'll have the art, get all the arts approved, and then, move on to bid it out. So it should be a relatively quick process. It's been a longer than average process trying to get this AE firm, nailed down. They brought us like a $2 million project the first time. So we've cut it back to 500,000. I think that's, for everything we want, to get the HVAC up and running, to get everything cleaned up, to get the atmosphere where it needs to be. I think we can get there with that.
That's quite a substantial reduction.
Yes.
Well, they also put in a lot of things that the curators handed the architect a wish list. So it
And
would,
they ran with it.
they ran with it. So just for instance, one thing that I agree with the curators, it would be great if Douglas Avenue had a roll-up door, right? It lacks that. It doesn't have a true loading dock. But unfortunately, that's just not in the cards. And frankly said, maintenance reserve is not meant to improve a building. It's meant to bring it back to the state it was in when it was new. So the state, the DEB would not permit it anyway.
Okay.
So that's the reason for the $2 million. You're not supposed to bring up things like that. Anyway, moving right along. Okay, so, I don't want to, I'm not trying to make this a session where we walk through every bullet. I think those are some of the high points about research and collections. And of course, we're not making all the decisions today, but as we take this outline and expand upon it, we'll have plenty of time for input and look for any holes in our plans that we should fill. So Art, since you're committee chair for research and collections, is there anything else that you remember from strategic planning that you specifically want to add to the forefront of?
Like I say, there's a 27-page document that I can filter through. Off the top of my head, I do not.
Okay, all right. Well, I think this will be a start for us and we can continue to evolve this document. So just for the sake of time, since we have 6 or 7 points to go through, if we move on to financial stability and diversification, of course, tonight at 5:30 is the celebration for the $1 million mark in the foundation's endowment. It's exciting because it goes back to Barry Dorsey came and kind of read the riot act to the foundation when he was board chair. He didn't hold anything back, and he basically said they need to make the endowment grow, and the foundation did. And I think this should be part of our strategic plan, the continued growth of the endowment, maybe not for this generation so much, but for future generations. I think it's important to leave the institution better than we found it, and this is one way to do it. Plus, it's a great handshake between the staff, the board of trustees, and the foundation board. So I don't have specific recommendations on how they continue to grow. We've kind of laid the groundwork for estate gifts and so forth. We also have mechanisms for donations of stock and so forth. I don't know if anything you want to cover about that, Ryan, as far as mechanisms for growing the endowment.
I think just overall, we've got good partnerships. Obviously, the foundation, our investment firm, Stifel, been good partners, not only for managing and helping grow the endowment, but just being supporters themselves, making donations and just, being on board. And one cool thing is that the endowment started with research. So in 1992, the first endowment gift was a $5,000 gift to the Pete Boyceau Research Fund. The first chair of the board of trustees gave a $5,000 gift for research, and that's where it all started. So it's that account's grown. It's been drawn on for different, equipment projects, different things. And Mr. Boyceau's happy and excited that it's grown.
Yeah.
So.
All right, so that's one thing that I want to point out. If you go to the third bullet where we talk about, this was specifically brought up about broadening in various ways our public engagement. As we're the folks that do the day-to-day, what we're going to recommend is we take things that are already successful and find ways to grow them. So for instance, with Museums for All, I don't know if you had a chance really to dive into the finances of Jonathan's quarterly report from the first quarter of this fiscal year, but you'll notice that our admissions was at 18%. But if you factor in the fact that the foundation has raised funds specifically to offset the free admission from the Museums for All program, you know, that's how it all balances out. So I think we can take that success and run with it. Similarly, I'll let Ryan again give an update on where we stand with the Young Explorers Center, but this is going to be something that is going to be part of our financial plan going forward, because we feel that we're going to see an increase in memberships as well as general attendance when we have this center open, because there is not a similar venue for families within, you know, at least a 30-mile, if not farther radius. I mean, there's Greensboro Science Center, right? But when you combine the Museums for All program with the Young Explorer Center, I think it would be awesome. So do we have a quick update on that? I know that was part of the previous or the current strategic plan, but it's something that's going to spill over into the next one.
Yeah. So currently, we've got the library shelving, the compactors out on state surplus. So Bobby, of course, is on the call as well. She's kind of led that effort, thanks to her work. But the process is going to be put it out for surplus. It's open to other agencies, private companies, individuals, whoever might want to bid on it. So it'll be open for a few weeks. We'll keep monitoring it. Whoever accepts the shelving will be responsible for removal fees. They'll have to be contract with a company to get them removed. So obviously, it's not a small project. So hopefully that goes pretty smoothly. At that point, we'll have an empty 17 square foot space, which would be amazing for multi-use for festivals. Between the time it's emptied and the time it becomes the Young Explorers Center, it's going to be a multi-use space. It'll be very valuable. So we'll keep everybody updated on the surplus process. Library materials are at Douglas, properly stored, and in the future, they will become the library space with all the materials accessible.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Joe, excuse
Yes, sir.
me, I did think of one thing that,
Yeah.
a point we should add, and that's space. Whether we should be thinking about laying the groundwork for expanding the museum's footprint and or acquiring another space. We talked about YMCA. I know that's pie in the sky, but it's a symbol right now of adequate collection space. I don't think that the way it's configured now, that Douglas Avenue is a long-term solution. It's definitely a short-term solution for collection space, but we need to be thinking growth, and we should start making part of the plan, laying the groundwork for considering that, talking about it, getting things moving in that direction, just like we have on these other big projects.
Okay, I'm glad you brought that up because that connects to the long-term vision and growth section.
Oh, pardon me.
Yeah, it's the last bullet in that one.
Excuse me.
So, I mean, it's a years-long project, but I think now's the time to start if we really want to do this. So we can't just say, well, maybe 10 years from now we want something and then get to work then. We need to work in depth.
Yes.
So I agree 100%. And I think part of the next strategic plan, we should, try not to overuse the term, we should strategically engage with an architect who can begin to lay the groundwork. What do we do? Because I'm not an architect. I mean, if I had to put a wing on, I know where I'd put it, but I don't know if that's feasible. You need engineers to take a look at things. You need a lot of considerations taken care of. So,
But I think it's important to specify that this space would be dedicated to collections. And we got all these other things here, but I think collections needs to be explicit.
yeah, okay, well, then that can be part of it as well, in that the new wing plan, so to speak, would also include definitions of space allocation.
Great. Because we have talked about this just a tiny bit. You
Yes.
know, we threw out the idea of 10,000 square feet, and we know where would that be, but it would be specifically for collections.
There would be 10,000 square feet specific to collections for sure.
Yes.
But, you know, if we're gonna do this, we also need to expand our footprint for public.
Oh, I
programs
agree.
as well.
And that always comes up first.
Right.
I'm just
Okay.
saying that we need to be explicit about collections. That's all
Sure,
I'm saying.
sure, okay. All right. And speaking of which, you know, part of what we have on the fourth bullet of financial stability is creative use of assets, which, you know, we're partway through the pavilion construction. We intend to start using it definitely in the winter/spring, but there may be other opportunities as well. So that might be restarting, this was apparently was done long before I came to the museum, but there were fee-based field trips run by curators. That might be something that we explore, right? Enhanced tours. We used to do members behind the scenes and so forth, adding value to memberships and so forth. That might be something that we look to reinitiate. And I know there's a lot more that deals with financial stability and diversification, but again, I'm not trying to cover every bullet here.
Right.
Is there anything else that?
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment really related to the second bullet, and I think we heard this pretty strongly amongst a number of people during our session, and that is really putting a much bigger challenge to the foundation and to the idea of what the value of this endowment needs to be. Look how long, I'm not taking anything away from the efforts, but look how long it's taken us to get to where we are and to have meaningful growth across all these other pieces of the strategic plan. We're going to need millions, right? And I think that comes in the form of trying to recommend as part of this plan what we think the foundation target should be. And I think there also in that target needs to be some form of relationship to what the museum's budget will be in terms of what's coming from the state versus what's coming from, individuals or endowments. So I think the plan has to have a think big character to it when it comes to raising money, or else we're just going to be walking around in circles. And there's a lot of effort been spent on it, but I think we need to find that way to break through to the big dollars. Corey, where are you on that?
Just to put things into perspective, with no timeline, we haven't challenged them yet, but the foundation, and Brian, correct me if I'm wrong or missing a detail here, but after the $1 million was in sight, the finance committee of the foundation had decided we got to $1 million, not being fully conservative, but we were very cautious. So in other words, if the stock market did this, we did this, but if the stock market did this, we only did that, right? So that's how we've gotten here. And the foundation had suggested, let's keep that strategy going for investments until we reach $5 million. But there's nothing wrong with accelerating our push to that $5 million mark before they change the investment strategy.
Or should it be a $10 million mark? I don't know what the number should be, Joe. I mean, I think when we look at other and baseline other museums and how they're funding their growth, the only way we're going to be able to fund some of these really great ideas is getting money from the outside. And it's no secret to the people in that room with you that we can't do that on our own. That needs a major push. It needs, probably an investment in very, very, very serious big dollar fundraising, but that's how you make that exponential next step. Cord?
Well, I was just looking at the endowment as far as when we started it in 2010 until now. I mean, it basically took us 15 years to get to the $1 million. What I'm looking at is not a big pie in the sky thing, but I'd like to say, okay, maybe over the next 5 years, get to another $1 million, as opposed to taking 10, 15 years to do it. That's the issue, is the growth is there, but how do we get it just a little faster?
Yeah, I guess that, and that's really valid. I just think that when we look at all the things we want to do and the political environment we're in, it's going to be really hard to get the funding to do all those things. And so we're going to have to get that funding elsewhere. And that means we're going to have to step out to other new sources and new ways of going at it. And we don't have enough people that, can help us to get there. We've got a great team working on what we've got, but we really need to make that next fundamental step. So I think we can continue to pursue this, but once we put dollars to all these visions, it'll become a lot clearer. and beyond that, I think if we limit ourselves in the thinking to what we can afford given our current, approach to fundraising and a current, ability to get state money, you know, a lot of these things won't happen. So,
Hey, Mark, are you gonna be here tonight for the
yeah,
reception?
yeah, I'll be here. I'm leaving here about
Save
noon.
me a couple of minutes, because I'd like to discuss something with you that might feed into this,
All right.
and getting a greater involvement by the board to.
Okay, good. Hey, anytime you're doing that, that's great.
Okay, well, you haven't heard me yet.
Yeah. There's,
This doesn't have to do with the dunk tank, does it?
Mind reading, you're adding mind
yeah,
reading?
I think building a Krispy Kreme off to the side of the museum would be a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it wouldn't.
All right. Okay, just looking at the time, I'm gonna move on to educational impact and relevance. One of the, you know, Christy and her team, are just doing really, really well. But there are more things we can do. So there was the, one comment about, and I have it in the second bullet here, engage the Department of Education for expanded statewide outreach. We're already kind of building that foundation. So we have, you know, this is not necessarily within our mission, but we've come up with a way to use it to our advantage, and that is the VA 250. So in 2026, we celebrate the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And that's going to be huge. I mean, Virginia has already invested millions in preparing for that. We jumped in too, and we developed a lot of goodwill from the Secretary's office, and she's basically using us saying, hey, if a natural history museum can support this, you can too, right? So with that goodwill, we've got some strategies to use that as sort of a catalyst for further statewide outreach and use all the momentum from Richmond, as well as other state agencies that are going to be celebrating this, all the historical properties and so forth. We'll jump in on this too, be part of the celebration. And we think that this is going to be something that will be one example of strategically aligning with outside efforts to expand our message.
Perfect.
And related to that in a way, if you go down to the fourth bullet, you know, there was a talk about more cross-departmental work. And I think we already do that, but I think if we should still include it within the strategic plan to remind everyone every day, our strategic plan never gathers dust, right? We do pull it off the shelf very frequently, refer to it, right? But if we have it in black and white, we'll remind everyone that we're all in a way responsible for education messages. We're all in a way responsible for the exhibit development and content development and so forth. And the other thing that came up that I'm actually very excited about, we've had some preliminary discussions about, is the idea of storytelling. We're pretty good about basically turning textbooks inside out, popping them up onto a screen or a panel or something along those lines. But there are specific methods that deal with telling stories and connecting things back to real people. That is the curators and the work that they and their staff do. So we're going to make that part of our kind of cultural change in-house, but it's going to have to start with the strategic plan.
So within education is, and I can't recall because it's been a few weeks since I read the document, is there a push that says that, you know, over this strategic plan, we need funding to support methods of outreach that are digital or are not, let's say, on site, that are the things we had to do during COVID, and how do we take that to the next level to push the museum out to the rest of the state?
I was just gonna say, we try to be flexible on the need-based scholarships that we offer. So we generally offer a menu for schools and partnering agencies, so that includes digital or virtual, offsite, and then in-house.
Right. But we've been doing that. I get that. I'm just trying to say, is there any additional resource to take us to the next level over what we can see is coming over the next 5 years that
I think that's going to need a discussion, Mark, but I think there is absolutely nothing wrong with putting, you know, financial goals as benchmarks, you know, within a strategic plan. So taking that idea and turning it to reality, well, at least within the strategic plan, I think is going to require some further discussion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. want to make a note here.
The third bullet point, I agree with that, but I think it would be better placed with research and collections.
Yeah. Yeah, I think when we were discussing it amongst staff, it was the idea that we sometimes do, but not always reach out to various research associates to help with exhibit content. So for instance, we're doing it with VMH Waynesboro. We've done pretty well there.
I see, so
Right.
that makes sense.
So that's where it comes from, but I'm
Okay.
happy to put it in there because I think that also broadens things out, you know, I sometimes think that the research associate programs on autopilot, I wouldn't mind seeing a specific bullet pertaining to it, in the strategic
Well,
plan.
that might be something that the Research and Collections Committee in cooperation with the curatorial staff can look at together
Please,
and see if there's some way that we can see if, I don't know, if there's, forgive me, dead wood. We can clean the list that way, and also to see if there are gaps in the expertise that we could tap into, and maybe extend invitations to people with expertise out there that could fill in some of the knowledge gaps that we might have in that particular pool.
and, you know, I don't want to make promises, but we can look at some of the funds that we have specific for research and collections and provide temporary housing and so forth. We do
Yeah.
extend invitations to come either to collaborate or to curate a collection for which, going back to the earlier
That would be
conversation.
great. Yeah, let's start that. Maybe Ben, we can talk about that tomorrow. Morning, just bring it up. Don't have to necessarily do anything about it, but that could be part of a regular discussion that we build. But again, in concert with the curators, I'm not interested in running anything in particular.
No, absolutely.
Okay,
Cool. All right, we're doing good. We're about halfway through the list and we're about halfway through the meeting, so this is all right. Long-term vision and growth, we've already talked about the idea of the new wing. I just wanted to highlight a couple of these bullets here. VMH Waynesboro, that's ongoing, right? We're gonna have to include that within our strategic plan because we do invest time and so forth into that. Another one that I want to bring up is the mobile science outreach trailer strategy. So the first thing we're going to do, of course, we've already decided that we're going to invest the maintenance reserve funds that we were given are meant to be specific to that trailer. We've talked to the former operator, and I think that we play our cards right. We can use this on site as a kind of bridge till we get operational with our branch campus. But then we might also look at it, you know, how we might want to use this as an actual traveling asset to hit different parts of the state. Whereas VMFA had a full-time operator, you know, so they're basically paying an FTE. They pay for the movement, maintenance, and everything that goes into running a tractor trailer. There are other options too. For instance, if we can set up a budget in some capacity where, you know, we get contractors to move it from point A to point B, where a curator can meet up with the delivery and so forth. So there are strategies that I think we can discuss to bring that from fixing the trailer up to using it as a mobile asset around the Commonwealth.
for years, I don't know where my voice is today. The LA County Museum of Natural History ran two big rigs that traveled, and the person that was involved in the development of that in the late 90s, I'm still in contact with, and I could reach out to her and see if she has any, if they're still doing it, and see if they, you know, what processes they use to develop the support for that program, and it might be something that we can consider for our own.
Yeah, if they have a how, for lack of a better word, a how-to manual
Yeah.
on how to meld this into your day-to-day.
Yeah,
That
I'll do
would,
that.
that would be nice. As frankly said, nobody here has any experience, and we didn't see this coming. You know, this was an outside force that got it to us. I'm grateful they were thinking about us, but we're flying by the seat of our pants a
Yeah,
little bit.
Megan Walsh, she's the I believe she's the chief of education now, but she was part of the team, you know, 25 plus years ago that
Right.
developed the mobile museum, and then it was so popular, they got a second rig that traveled.
Nice. California's a big state. All right, and a couple of other things, you know, the idea of a Wilson Park connection through a future canopy walk, and or other strategies, that's still ongoing. We have, with the new city council in place here in Martinsville, they're very interested in the museum becoming involved. So we have some support there. That also potentially, now there's no handshakes, there are no promises or anything like that. It was just the idea that they would help find financial support to help make that happen. So we're going to continue those conversations, and we'll have to have some kind of section of the strategic plan to address that. So Wilson Park really is an undertapped resource. In fact, does anyone remember how old that tree was that Hayden found? Ben, do you remember when that how old that tree was?
Yeah, I want to say 1780s.
Yeah, it was 1780s or 1760s. I thought it was right before the Revolutionary War.
You're right. Yeah, well, it was, yeah, predated the Revolutionary War by a few years.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so you know, I think there's some amazing assets down there, and it's something, you know, even if it might take a decade to mature this, I think it's something that we need to pursue. Let me see here. This deviates a little bit from the document that Latala put together, but the the fifth bullet about human capital and institutional standards, you know, we feel as though the board has put a priority over the years on diversity, equity, inclusion, and access. So I think it behooves us to have some point of it in the strategic plan, right? So that's why we put that there. We of course are in this actually is going to help us generate a plan going forward here, but we of course have already submitted our AAM documents. Where we're at with that is the AAM staff, traditionally what they do is they take 2 to 3 months to go through it, look for anything that might be missing or needs updating or whatever, give you some advice on how to get from point A to point B. And then in the springtime, they submit that to site reviewers. So Mark, you're gonna have to put on your calendar vaguely that we're gonna need to involve you in some capacity, and every other board member is welcome to in whatever capacity they want, but the site visit will occur sometime in March or April.
Okay.
I'd like to be on that list. I have a little more flexibility coming to me.
That'd be
in
great.
March or April.
You know, and we also want, I don't mean to dive into the weeds here, but we also want someone, we're not gonna have enough time during the site visit to invest a full day to drive them up to Waynesboro to meet the key actors up there, to see the site and so forth. But I think what we can do is set up a mobile connection, and they can at least spend an hour talking to people like Tom Benzing and Len Poulin, the city manager, director of economic development, and so forth. So we'll get them involved. But anyway, that's beside the point. What I want to talk about here is that because of the timing, we will not find out if we are accredited until sometime around midsummer. Traditionally, we've released our strategic plans in May, right? So that's the end, last board meeting of the fiscal year. That's arbitrary, right? So it might be worth considering that we delay releasing or making official the new strategic plan until the at least the August board meeting, if not the November board meeting. Reason is that the whole purpose of the accreditation visit is to evaluate what you're doing, highlight the things that you're doing well, but then identify anything that might be red flagged or, you know, needs updating or something like that. Those don't normally lead to tabling of your accreditation. It is just something that you need to address before the next one 10 years later. So it might be worth it to leave a section open in the strategic plan in which we can come up with a response to any concerns that they have, so we know over the next several years, we know to address them. So I don't know if anybody has a thought on that. Again, the whole idea of releasing it in May is just traditional. It made sense.
I don't think it would hurt to have another 3 months or so to, you know, let it simmer a bit, especially with some outside input.
Mark?
I'm all about getting it as best we can, right?
Okay. Cord, you on board?
Yes, sir. The only thing I would say is that some of the board members that we have currently going, we've got 6 of us that come off in the spring of next year, so we might want to get some of the ones that are staying on a little more involved.
Making a note on that for the minutes.
Yep.
Cause I'm, if I'm not mistaken, I think there's 6 of us that come off the board in,
2025.
yep, in June of 2025.
Yep.
So that's gonna be a real, I know that unless they replace us immediately, we'll get to hang on for a little bit. But I would think just in the meantime, to kind of hedge the bets, the ones that are staying on, we need to work with them a little closer and have them a little more involved.
Yeah, you're looking at 2 of them right here, you and me. So did they go off? I think.
If I'm not mistaken, you, Melanie, me, Ann Burnett,
Yep.
Jennifer Burnett, that might be it. The 5 of us are all going off at the same time.
Ann and Mark are eligible for reappointment should they accept it. So we'll have the 3 of you rolling off because you're now won't be eligible for another term. And we, of course, still have the vacancy from Dr. Abdul Baki's
Yep.
resignation. All that said, though, we have been working with the secretary, and you know, I did want to talk in some capacity with all of you. I don't want to be the one simply responsible for finding new board members. Finding my own bosses seems awkward, but I would like input if we could find good people that have an interest. Just FYI, I know this is public, so I don't want to say too much here, but we did make a recommendation from for someone with some celebrity status, and the secretary's office was enthusiastic about it. How much headway they're making with that, I don't know, but we'll see. Who did that come from, Ryan? That was somebody reached out to us, and I'm just blanking on.
Probably, yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay.
I have my notes somewhere. Okay.
Well, I appreciate your comments there, Cord, because, you know, it's one thing to develop a strategic plan and then walk away once it's released, you know, as opposed to being someone who's, you know, got a lot of longevity in front of them. So thank you. And then the last part that I specifically wanted to, well, last 2 points that I have, the last bolded section, stronger boards working together. I just have some vague language there. That's something I think it has to come from the trustees and from the foundation directors. What does this look like? The identification of mechanisms for closer collaboration. Maybe it goes back to the endowment as that discussion. So that's something I'm going to count on the board to help us flesh out. We don't have to solve all the world's problems right now.
Right.
Right.
And then I also want to point out, I just think it's important, and this is just what happens. We give simply one example amongst many, but the staff will remain vigilant for unanticipated opportunities, similar to when we secured funds for the energy project, the ESCO project from 2022 to 2024. That was not part of the strategic plan, but it was too good to pass up.
Yep.
And Tim and Jonathan, amongst others, invested a lot of time and effort to make sure that that project came to fruition. But we just need to keep in mind that you know, we need to be agile when it comes to opportunities. So that's kind of my quick breeze through what I thought were some of the most important things based upon my observations and the leadership team's observations at the strategic planning retreat, as well as what came out of Latala's document. So I don't know if there's anything, you know, that is glaringly missing at this point that you would like to try to address. Anything you remember reading about in Latala's document that we're not giving proper attention to?
No, I think this is a great summary. It really hits the high points, and you know, I can actually have a vision of what we went through that day, right? By looking at it, I can remember the individual discussions, obviously, and I think it's just perfect.
And Mark, since you brought that up, we also have more work to do, and we will, and that, we do appreciate your guidance from the standpoint that we need to connect this plan to things like our mission, our charter, and the Code of
Yep.
Virginia, as well as back to our budget,
Right.
right? So to kind of create that, three-legged stool or triangle or however you want.
Yeah, I think that should be relatively easy in terms of putting together a forward or an opening statement to the plan, and just sort of sets the stage as to, you know, the overarching mission and so forth, and say all of this is in accordance with that.
And
I
another
think
thing I want
it
to
guided our discussions anyway when we were together building this, so.
Right. Another thing that I want to make sure comes out crystal clear in this document, in some capacity, we've never really taken advantage of, the phrasing in the Code of Virginia, which identifies the Virginia Museum of Natural History and its purposes, which connect back to this FTE we want to
Yeah,
ask for,
yeah.
as an essential government function, right?
Yep.
Not every museum has that. You know, not every state agency has that phrasing. I know VMFA does, Science Museum of Virginia does, we do. Others don't necessarily have that in there, you know, and I think we need to take advantage of that.
Yep, I think that's great. In general, from the staff, do you feel like, and it's a tough discussion, but is there an appropriate balance amongst the functions and you know, that you see, guys, in terms of what you need to run your areas? That includes you, Ben, obviously.
Anyone wants
Sorry,
to-
you're off to the side over here, so I gotta keep looking, make sure I see you.
Just thinking forward, moving forward, I think we need to look to fund those FTEs before establishing new initiatives. I think you're putting the cart before the horse if you're looking to
Yep.
increase things that we're doing without increasing those FTEs. And I think
Yes. Thank you.
Since Christy couldn't make this meeting, I'll speak for her. You know, the educational initiatives here are very much appreciated. They're a feel-good thing in our community and beyond. But in all seriousness, I don't know if anyone wants to add to this, but I think Christy and her team is pretty well. She has a new person coming on. She'll start full-time in December. But they're at capacity for sure. And incidentally too, related to that, and I don't know if this is something that goes back into the strategic plan, but I'd asked Christy to put together a salary survey. You know, so I guess it's public information, so it's okay for me to bring up here. So staff salaries are not supposed to be a secret in the Commonwealth. But the new person, just FYI, her annual salary is $30,000 a year.
Ooh.
Yes. So we got input from DHRM. Christie's putting together a salary survey based upon other state workers in similar positions and people who are in private or nonprofit institutions as well, to get a well-rounded look. And they said that that this is not an uncommon occurrence in the Commonwealth, that these surveys are presented to the corresponding secretary and so forth. So we'd like to get that ball rolling here in time for not this General Assembly session, but for the next one, because that's when they're going to produce the next biennial budget, so the 2-year budget plan.
So Joe, I think we can just let's sort of make sure we bring that back up in our discussion this afternoon. I think that one of the agenda items I'd put up was things around what you and I are going to talk to Abby about soon. So
Yes.
If we can, I think that's part of the same discussion.
Echo what Jonathan said. I think staff are doing a great job across the board, productivity, and I think we said it before, in the most positive way. We have no business doing all we're doing with the number of staff we have. It's amazing. If you compare 15 years ago, the productivity, research, and education, and across the board, folks are doing a great job. So in many areas we're at capacity, those FTEs will be much appreciated.
we're at capacity in the sense of funding too. I mean, we don't want to pay low salaries. We would like to pay people more, but the money's just not there.
And other I agree 100% with what they're saying. And, you know, that was part of my evaluation 2 evaluations ago. And I've taken that seriously to look for ways that we can cull as we call them, dogs, things that we do just because we do them, but might not really generate a lot of impact, right? So I think we've done that. But the good thing is that some of this that we're talking about will certainly dovetail nicely into what we're already doing. The second thing is that some of the projects we're working on will eventually sunset because we'll have completed them, and that's a good thing. And in other cases, we do have, and it's nothing to take for granted. We're very fortunate, even though we never have enough money, we do have money set aside for contractors. So we would never be able to do all we're doing at Douglas Avenue, for instance, or even just keeping up with the building if we didn't have those resources. So keeping our eye on those resources, making sure that, say, Tim King, for instance, has that ability to maintain the building. There are little things that we do, but, you know, for instance, just something as simple as the parking lot resurfacing, right? You know, utilizing contractors to assist the staff in that way is something that, you know, and I know my colleagues at Piedmont Arts, for instance, you know, they don't have that advantage. You know, the board over there will struggle if there's a large maintenance project. They just did a capital campaign to raise money for a new roof, you know, and Callie and I we felt that, right? We understood, we were donors to that project because we just knew that it's gotta be really hard. So we can't take those things like that for granted. That's what I have, Mark. So I'm passing the football over to you.
Yeah, I think this was the most important part that we needed to get through. I think that, you know, anything else in terms of from the strategic planning, I think, you know, there were pieces of this that sort of fit into some immediate initiatives that, you know, for instance, Roberto's discussion about I can't remember the name of the organization, that document that he shared with us on
AAM.
board development as well. And I think that has to potentially come from outside funding. I don't want any of that to come from monies that we're talking about here. I think that there is, you know, enough going on through what's already planned for the board meeting tomorrow that I'm comfortable with us just giving this one page back, which we have to the board, to say this is the distillation of that document. We encourage you again to read it, and then this is what's going to, you know, form the basis of how we put the actual plan together and put some dollars and cents to it. I don't know that we need to focus on anything else from the strategic planning committee with the board tomorrow. This is the most important thing.
Okay, we'll make sure to have a hard copy at each seat.
Yeah.
And, first thing in the morning or this evening or whatever,
Yeah.
we'll make sure the board everybody on the board has a copy of this.
Yeah.
Incidentally, I just want to make sure credit goes where credit is due. Ryan was the person to take the first stab at the
Thank you.
organizational aspect of this document.
Thank you, Ryan.
Staff kind of went in and tinkered with it, and so.
Yeah, I thought about putting it into an AI machine and see what it came out, but
Just the walking AI machine.
I'm afraid of that though. Okay, no, I think that's great. I think that's great. I don't have anything else for this group. Art, any comments, you know, other comments from you in terms of what you think we might want to, or record what we might want to show or discuss in more than this document with the entire board?
Beyond just being explicit about space for collection space, no.
Yeah. Yeah, okay,
Thank you, though.
all right. Cord, anything?
No, I think the one page should be sufficient.
Yeah, yeah. Otherwise you lose them. All right, guys.
Mark, Cord, thank you for joining us online.
Yep, thank
Really
you.
very
Thank
much.
you for setting it up.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
it's very agile
Yeah.
with this, which is great, so.
All right, I will probably be right at the dot of 3:30.
You got a good day for travel, Mark.
Yeah, at least it
Yeah.
won't be pouring rain like it
Yeah,
was.
exactly.
All right, great.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you soon.
Bye.
Cord, happy travels. Whatever.